I take most of what you say with a massive pinch of salt, but I appreciate you.
I take it with
But that's fine.
kilos of salt
And
when
that's
it
fine.
comes to you.
But I appreciate you coming on the program.
Who survived
To be honest with you,
chemical
Professor,
attacks.
I know that you think you can just bark out your instructions to me as if somehow I'm beholden to the Iranian regime over what books I should be reading, but I don't really feel that burning desire to read books just because Professor Marandi, the chief propagandist for the Iranian regime, tells me to.
Now, every single time Professor Marandi and Piers Morgan get together, it's always quite a heated exchange. And I'm going to be 100% transparent. I do not understand why Piers continues to have Professor Marandi on each and every single time. But listen, I'm not going to complain about it. In this clip, we're going to see Professor Marandi leave Piers Morgan so frustrated and visibly rattled multiple times just by his calm demeanor and some of the points that he pushes back on Piers Morgan, the war within Iran, Donald Trump, and a whole host of other things. As usual, let's get into the clip. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts towards the end.
I have had other guests, including Victor Davis Hanson just now, who say it's been actually a clear victory for the United States militarily. They've caused enormous damage to Iran's military, which I think is unarguable, and that if they wanted to militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz, they could do it in a heartbeat, but for political reasons, they're not taking that option at the moment. And that actually no one's quite sure who's running Iran. The new supreme leader has not been seen in public. And therefore, the assumption is that actually it's a rudderless ship and is far more damaged than Iran would ever care to admit. So my first question about that would be, where is your supreme leader? No one's seen him. Is he alive?
Oh, he is alive and well. And Piers, I don't think anyone who knows anything about anything takes anything you say seriously. Because if Iran has been defeated, and if they could take the Strait easily, and if Iran has no leaders and things are falling apart, and the insulting language that you use about Iran, if that was all correct, then it's over. Then you don't have to have this conversation with me. Go and do what you like to do. That's not what's happening, isn't it? The United States has been humiliated, and the Zionist regime has been exposed for the genocidal regime that it is. Of course, last time I asked you 3 times, what do you think about an ethnosupremacist regime? And you refused to answer. But the fact is that the United States is doing all of this and destroying the global economy for an ethnosupremacist regime to preserve that. But if they're really worried about the U.S. economy and the world economy, then why don't they just open the Strait and take out the oil and take the country, and we'll all be refugees like the Palestinians, where you kicked them out of their homes in 1948.
I mean, President Trump has indicated that's exactly what he may do if there's no deal.
Well, that's because the West is led by monsters, and you are friends with those monsters, ethnosupremacists and
well, to be honest with you, look, you know what? You do this, like we have a perfectly civilized conversation, and then you can't resist. No, hang on.
You said SHIT.
You can't resist. SHIT. And you can't. What you can't resist doing is putting your fake halo on your head and pretending that you yourself do not help prop up a monstrous regime. You talk about, America has to be held accountable for killing people. What about Iran's regime, which for 47 years has killed so many people, not least its own people, as we saw in January? Should they be held accountable for that? Would you like to see your regime held accountable for the thousands of protesters it killed in January, for the Americans it's killed, for the Israelis it's killed, for the way it's propped up Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, to cause endless terrorism all over the Middle East? Would you like your regime to be held accountable for that monstrous activity?
Piers, first of all, you used that word that I won't repeat. And that's exactly how you like to frame things. You started insulting Iran, and I gave you a much more civilized response.
What is the word you're talking about? Sorry.
You said SHIT.
No, I didn't.
That's not how I heard it.
No, I didn't.
If that's not what you said.
Sorry, just to be clear.
Okay, then I'm
at
mistaken.
No stage of this interview
then I'm mistaken.
have I said that.
Okay, then I'm mistaken.
Yeah,
then I'm mistaken. I thought you said. But first of all, I asked you to come to Iran. You could have seen what Iran is
I've
like.
asked you to
didn't
come
want
here.
to.
You haven't come either. So you know what?
Well,
It
I've
works both
lived
ways.
there. I've lived there, Piers.
Yeah.
I've lived there. I've been there many times. I
Yeah.
did my PhD there. So there's a bit of a difference, just so you.
Yeah, but you
just for your
haven't come,
information.
and I haven't come. So we're in the same boat.
I've been there times. I was there on the I was actually in that protest that you and I discussed about together in 2003, when you were a somewhat different person than you are now.
I wasn't a different person at all. No, I was exactly the same person.
Let me respond. Let me respond. As a person, well, first of all, I asked you to read that book, Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Lebanon, and I'm sure you didn't bother to do so. But as a person who survived...
To be honest with you,
attacks,
Professor, I know that you think you can just bark out your instructions to me as if somehow I'm beholden to the Iranian regime over what books I should be reading, but I don't really feel that burning desire to read books just because Professor Marandi, the chief propagandist for the Iranian regime, tells me to. Call me naive.
Sure, do what you like. Do what you like. But as a person who survived 2 chemical attacks that your regime helped give to Saddam Hussein, I don't think you or your government or the
I led the
regime
campaign against the Iraq war that my government waged in 2003, as you know.
No, that's not when they used chemical weapons, Piers. They used them in the 1980s, and your government gave it to Saddam Hussein. Back then, he was your friend. Back then, he was your ally. You forget that you've waged 3 wars against my country. We're the bad guys, of course, but you carried out a coup in 1953. Then during the revolution, when people were on the streets, your regime supported the Shah, gunning down people. Then after the revolution, they encouraged Saddam Hussein to invade our country. The West gave him chemical weapons. I survived both mustard gas and nerve agents in 2 separate attacks. Many didn't survive, but that wasn't important in the West back then.
Can I ask you one question before we finish? Just one question. I'm not responsible for what my government did when I was a teenager, just to be clear. But just one question for you.
Of course you are.
No, I've got a question.
Of course you are. Every human being.
No, I'm not.
Every human being who's politically aware is responsible.
I'm asking you a question, though. I'm asking you a question.
And I am too.
Okay, I'm asking you a question, which is one that is put by a lot of my viewers. I'm just curious of the answer. I'm not being accusatory, but you always do these interviews with apparently a full internet signal in a country where many people have had their internet turned off since January. How are you doing that, and why is it one rule for you and another for the large majority of the people of Iran?
Well, first of all, as I told you, you already asked me this question before. During the war, the internet was never off. It was off to international, the international internet, Iranian internet, and Iranian websites and Iranian apps were used. But back then, during the war, they were using the internet to find targets in Iran and to murder people and to destroy Iranian infrastructure. So they limited that. Back then, if you recall, and as I explained, I was not using my own internet. Now they've opened up the internet more. They've helped me to be able to use this, but to use a better internet connection. But as we speak, I am using a VPN, like most other people. But I think the best thing for you to do is to counter my arguments. Your country bombed my country. The United States slaughtered children. And that's why we had internet restrictions. Otherwise, before the slaughter of our people, of our leaders, of our scientists, of our academics, of schools, of bombing apartment blocks, before that,
you know what? Your own regime, according to many reports, slaughtered up to 30,000 of its own people, including children, in January. But you will say to me, nothing to see here. They're all heavily armed militants.
You believe that?
I believe that over you. Yeah.
You believe that? You believe it. So you believe it?
I do. Yeah. I think many thousands of people.
Well, then that
were
just shows
slaughtered
that you
by
are
your regime. Yeah, I do.
Your regime, because the evidence shows the Iranians gave the names of all the people who were killed, every single one, 3,117. Hundreds were police officers or officers of the law, and 2,000 of them were people who were caught in the crossfire by people who were armed by your government.
Of course.
Who said they were armed by your government?
They were all killed by the protesters.
Channel 14 of Israel.
That's right, yeah.
Channel 14 of Israel.
Yeah.
Pompeo, you know
Forgive
these
me,
people.
Professor Marandi,
It's all
we've run out of
there.
time.
But this doesn't.
But as usual,
so your government killed my people.
You know, Professor
your
Marandi, it's always
murdered
the reason I get you on, Professor
people.
Marandi, is it's always interesting to hear a voice from Tehran talking, and I appreciate you coming on. I take most of what you say with a massive pinch of salt, but I appreciate.
Oh, I take it with.
But that's fine.
Kilos of salt
and that's
when
fine.
it comes to you.
But I appreciate you coming on the program.
So I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there because there's a number of things that I just want to get through. First and foremost, it's interesting because when Professor Marandi and Piers get together and they clash, Piers will always abruptly just end the interview. That's one thing I've always noticed. Now, I was going to go through my points in order out of how the clip went, but I'm going to do it in a bit of reverse because this claim of the 30,000 people that were slaughtered in January, I'm going to need more factual information when it comes to this. And I'm talking from the United States side because there's so many different reports as well as varying numbers when it comes to it. When you take that information and you pair it alongside exactly what Professor Marandi said towards the end, Donald Trump admitting that I think it was through the Houthis, I believe, they were meant to arm the Iranian people. When you take a look at all that information, even if the Iranian people were armed, am I saying that it's right that they slaughtered X amount of people? No. But the problem with that is that you're now giving them a justification and a reason for why they did what they did. You see, if people are going to try and overthrow a government and they are shooting at the government, that then gives a justification for why the government can take those individuals out. It just gives them a justification. And that's the problem with the fact that it is that Donald Trump and this administration tried to arm the Iranian people. Now, when it comes to Piers Morgan asking about Professor Marandi's internet and saying one rule for one and then a different rule for others, while he simultaneously supports Donald Trump and Israel, is just peak hypocrisy. You see, the reality is this: if Piers Morgan actually stood on what he is saying and meant what it is that he's saying, he couldn't in good conscience be friends with and still support Donald Trump. Because as Israel stand by and they pass laws that allows Israel to hang Palestinians, meanwhile, if someone from Israel was to do the exact same thing, the rule wouldn't apply to them. In good conscience, Piers Morgan wouldn't be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump. He wouldn't be able to be friends with him because of the fact that Donald Trump could have influence on how it is that Israel chooses to do things. He could, but that's the reality. And that's the reason why Piers Morgan has just been a massive hypocrite when he tries to use the one rule for one and one rule for others narrative that he's trying to push. Now, on the point where Piers was talking about coming to the UK and going to Iran, Piers is clearly just being obtuse. We know it. He knows that it's not the same thing as Professor Marandi coming to the UK as him going to Iran. Professor Marandi's been here. He's lived here. He knows what the way of life is like in Iran. Also, he's not criticizing how it is that the United Kingdom people live. He's criticizing the government that have helped the United States and Israel in their efforts within the war on Iran. But Piers Morgan is criticizing the way that it is that things happen and the way that they're conducted within Iran. So Piers Morgan, if he's getting an invitation to see it for himself as a journalist, go and do it. Go and do it. Don't call Professor Marandi a propagandist, but when you have an opportunity to see if he's telling the truth, you choose not to take it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is an actual propagandist, and this administration repeatedly push propaganda, but he just eats up whatever it is that they serve. And we know that this administration are propagandists. Take a look at the report that CNN came out with the other day in regards to the American bases in the Middle East that have been absolutely decimated. But this administration want to push the narrative. They've won the war. They've absolutely destroyed Iran. But yet still the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Honestly, just in my personal opinion, Piers Morgan is just losing credibility more and more. I always do say sometimes he is on the right side of things, but I genuinely believe he knows the truth. That's why I say he's been obtuse, because I believe he knows the truth. But ratings, personal relationships, that is what he's prioritized when it comes to this, genuinely. You know, to call Professor Marandi a chief propagandist when you've been friends with Trump for 20 plus years, who is a genuine propagandist, a documented liar, and a corrupt individual, it's peak hypocrisy and it's shameful. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this exchange down in the comment section below. And while you guys are down there, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hype the video up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the bell notification. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.